I'm inclined to participate a lot in group conversations and take up a lot of space, but being really aware of how much you're contributing to the conversation and creating that space to let other people who maybe aren't as like talkative or feel as comfortable sharing in the group, stepping back so that other people feel like more comfortable engaging in the conversation. Another one that I like a lot is just acknowledging that oppression exists, and this sometimes can be like weird and abstract, but like there are systems of power in our society that operate in like big institutional levels, and there are also systems of power that operate in our personal interactions with each other. And some of those systems of power are sexism and racism and ableism and ageism. And so we're not here to debate about whether or not those things exist. We're just accepting that in this space together we acknowledge that they exist and they might be a part of how we're engaging with each other, and we're not going to argue over whether or not it is sexist or racist or whatever. It's we're just going to acknowledge that those things might happen and that like we're here to move through to like a different understanding together. And then another one that I like to add with that one is that like this one is just like if you're feeling offended by something, if you feel like you can just like say, wow, that was really offensive, or like I'm feeling hurt by that, or just like calling attention to something, and not so that we can have a group conversation about it, but like so that you can just express that feeling, and so that we can all hold be careful with each other and be gentle with each other, I guess. And then another one is if something's confusing, feel free to interrupt and be like, yo, what was that acronym you just used? Like, you just said 4 acronyms in a row and I don't know what any of those things are. Like, so like try not to interrupt each other, but if you're feeling confused about what like words or like acronyms people were saying.
I was talking about in Shenango County, they have the borders with Pennsylvania, right? And people there, they have too much apathy. And they say, well, I'm just a little guy, what can I do? You know, and they're going to do it anyway. And that's what you got to change in people's behavior. They lost hope. They think that they have no control. Yeah. And yet they want to, you know, that's because they're in the Marcellus Shale region. And see, like people where I live, there's the outcrop. So there's no, but I tell people there to go, well, they're not going to come and frack this. Yes, but they're going to come here and dump all their poisons here. They have to find some place for dilution, and they think that that's just because there's no oil that they're okay, so they don't have to have a moratorium. You know, and like in my town, we went to the board meeting and they let it lapse, and they go, well, why should we do that? Well, that's the reason. You know,
I'm going to just cut you off for a second because we're going to get into some of that in our discussion later.
Yeah,
and we're going to talk about like how we're going to work together to build power.
Yes, you gotta. People are just.
Yeah. Is that okay if we save
that?
Yes,
I
for
get
later?
so discouraged. I mean,
Could I say something about that? I look at the news every day. It says 3 hours, 4 hours, 300 headlines. 300 headlines a day is 10,000.
Yeah.
And I'm seeing stuff over and over and over that gives me hope. Far more that gives me hope than that I find discouraging. Believe me, I find a lot discouraging.
Yeah.
But I see so much that gives me hope, and so much of it is people doing things. They organize in ways that they don't even realize they're organizing.
Mm-hmm. All right, so I think that's a great thought, and I'm gonna move into just a few minutes of sharing about our definition of false solutions in this gas pipeline. So basically, a false solution is any solution to this word kind of
interrupt you. Does everyone feel cool with these agreements? Does that sound good for everyone?
I have one. Like some of the agreements are, I don't know like what one would actually do. So they're more of like acknowledging that oppression exists, that we're on stolen land. So in order to like hold myself and everyone else accountable, it would be helpful for me to like what is the agreement, because that's just a very.
So I think one of the one of the purposes of just acknowledging those things is that if it comes up, if those dynamics are playing out in the way that we're relating to each other in this conversation, we can collectively together take a look back at the agreements and say, hey, we're not here to argue over whether or not oppression exists. We agreed in the beginning of this. And so as facilitators, I think it's helpful, for me at least, to have like a group acknowledgement of the agreement, so that if there is something we need to pause and to like, if the discussion is getting mired down in like an argument over whether or not oppression exists, or like if like one person is taking up too much time, it's like as facilitators and as everyone here, we can be like, oh hey, I think that like in the beginning of this conversation we made this agreement, so maybe we can like move on to it, like, and move through this conversation and not keep like engaging with it. So some of them are less active and others are more active, but I think that's what I found helpful in my experience.
Well, yeah, and that's helpful for me. We're not here to argue. We're here to build consensus and like generate knowledge and share.
Yeah.
So our definition of what a false solution is basically any proposed solution to the climate crisis that, while trying to fix one aspect of the problem, is at the same time creating a whole new set of ecological problems, or reinforcing existing social systems that are a part of the problem, and social inequities and injustices. And so when we're talking about the Vermont gas pipeline, basically it's a gas pipeline that brings fracked gas from the Northwest Territories and Alberta into Vermont. And it would be a 43-mile pipeline that the first phase is going from north of Burlington and Colchester down to Middlebury. And then the second phase of the project would go from Middlebury underneath Lake Champlain over to Ticonderoga, New York, to serve the International Paper Plant. And then later phases of the project would connect this pipeline up with the United States transmission grids, like these pipelines that you're talking about that they're trying to build through New York State, so that Vermont would kind of become this pass-through for gas that's being fracked in the Marcellus Shale region, to eventually be able to go in the opposite, in either direction. So right now the first phase of the project is in the regulatory permitting stages. It's, there's a proposal before the Public Service Board, which is the decision-making body in Vermont that regulates, that has to give a certificate of public good to allow this project to start. And the second phase of the project is expected that they'll apply for the permits for that in the coming months. And so when we look at this as a false solution, one of the main reasons is because it's building out new fossil fuel infrastructure. Like natural gas is still a fossil fuel. It still has greenhouse gas emissions that some argue are higher than coal. The industry has done a really good job of greenwashing this, but it still is a fossil fuel, and we're still building out new infrastructure that locks us into fossil fuel consumption for the next 50 years.
Wouldn't last that long, probably.
And so that's one reason why we consider it to be a false solution. Another is because of fracking and the extraction process. Like fracking right now is happening up in Alberta, in the Northwest Territories. Those are places where there's unceded indigenous territory. There's a lot of low-income folks, and also in the fracking areas in New York and Pennsylvania, the Marcellus Shale area. There's a whole lot of environmental racism and classism that happens in the extraction areas, and these communities are disproportionately impacted by the extraction of natural gas and fracked gas. And then the ecological impacts of fracking alongside of that. Are people familiar generally when I say fracking with what that means? I'm gonna give a
gas.
quick fracking for gas. Yeah, fracking also, gas.
There's Gasland too now.
There is now Gasland too. It's on tour. Check it out. Basically it's this, a new way of extracting gas from the earth where there's a huge amount of water and chemicals is like shot down some crazy tube, creates cracks in the rock, and then gas is allowed to escape that otherwise would not be accessible to extract.
Yeah, it makes it a mini earthquake. Like all the
Yeah.
chemicals kind of
They
explode.
split the rocks apart. Yeah, and
Well, the gas companies will tell you they've been doing it for 50, 60 years. They've done some vertical wells with just water, but now they're going a mile down and then 2 miles sideways, and or more, at least 2 miles, and then they're using about 500 chemicals, all of which is exempt from disclosure thanks to the Halliburton loophole pushed through by Cheney in 2005. And it's causing earthquakes. And the reason they say that it is as bad or worse than coal is because the amount of energy to do that and the thousands of diesel truckloads per well, not to even mention the methane that escapes, which is something like 100 times or more the greenhouse gas of CO2. So it is as bad or worse than mountaintop coal removal.
If I could mention something about that, the history.
actually, can I continue with the presenting? I'm trying to give a quick presentation, and I also want to be aware of our agreement of step up and step back, that certain people have been speaking more than others, and let's just try
Go ahead.
to hold that. So another reason that we consider this to be a false solution is because of some of the corporate ownership structures that we see. Vermont Gas is owned by, I'm gonna mess this up, is owned by Gas Metro, which is a Canadian company that also owns Green Mountain Power, and it also owns the Velco, the Vermont Electric Company, and Gas Metro is owned by Enbridge, which is the majority share is owned by Enbridge, and Enbridge is like this huge, oil and gas mega company, Canadian company. That is also the same company that's trying their darndest to get a pipeline to move tar sands out to the East Coast. So when we look at solutions to the climate crisis, we don't see that they can include like these same corporate money-making systems. So like the people that are creating the problem in the first place, that are these like corporate interests, are not going to come up with a solution. They're just coming up with a new way to like pump out as much money and profit as they can. And they're not the people that are gonna like save the world. And then another reason why we look at this is the last reason that we're going to share today, why we see this gas pipeline as a false solution, is because of the decision-making process that we have here in the state of Vermont. It's, basically the Public Service Board is the main decision maker in this case, and it's 3 older white men who sit on a board. They serve a term of 6 years. And it's a very technical and legal process that people can like apply to become interveners, and basically their lawyers would represent them in the case. It's a series of like questions and answers that they have some public hearings, but they don't legally have to like consider the public comment in their testimony. There's really no democratic way for just regular folks to get involved and have a say in the project. And so we see that as like a false solution because it's kind of like reinforcing these really non-democratic modes of that's my definition of a false solution. And now we're going to move into some discussion about
We can hear each other.
facilitate.
If we can hear each other.
People need to move in closer to you. Also, if anyone wants to sit on this, I'm totally fine if you're so we wanted to open it up with an example of like the campaign we've been working on, but there's like a slew of false solutions that sometimes can be a little bit divisive in the green movement, I think, because I don't know, that's why we're opening this up to discussion now, is there's a lot of things I think that go on that, like when I'm cabling down there, people will say, well, isn't natural gas better than coal? And I think that these kinds of questions up to sort of what are other false solutions and why they're false solutions, and there may be some different ideas about whether it's false or not, but we want this to be a space that's like really open to this kind of discussion, because I don't think it happens enough or in a productive enough environment. So this could just be like anyone, and if a lot of people have ideas, I can start a stack. But
I have a false solution that I've run across and I've started following for years. I like to work outside. You know, I've worked outside my whole life. But been working outside, you know, I sort of look up at the sky and I see these kids flying by. 10 years ago, since I've kind of moved on to a different part of the world, just because of that reason. There's a couple of movies I don't know if anybody's seen. From the same guy, actually, just saw it. The guy's name is Dan Wigan. The movies are What in the World Did They Spray? The second movie is Why in the World Did They Spray?
And the road, what?
Why in the world are they spraying?
Oh.
And what in the world are they spraying?
So are they spraying this stuff and talking about it as a solution to the climate crisis?
They just surfaced like a couple of years ago. The United States government has finally come out and admitted to it. They said, oh yeah, we're deploying two programs. One is called SAG, S-A-G, which is the Stratospheric Aerosol and Geoengineering. The second one is SRM, which is Solar Radiation Management. They have a theory that, you know, by doing all this, they're going to stop global warming. When in fact, they're creating global warming, in my opinion. The author who's come up with these movies and the rest of it. I have there's actually a YouTube video you can watch. And there's 10 bullet points here that pretty much describe exactly what's going on. And I'll just leave you guys with these. And you can just follow them. And you can just become aware, I guess, just become conscious of it. Because there's massive spraying aerosols going on every day, 24/7, globally. It's not just an issue here. I moved to Hawaii, so it's happening there. It's happening in LA. I stop off in LA. It's happening everywhere. Okay. I watch movies, foreign movies, just to get, oh yeah, look, there's chemtrails in the sky. Chemtrails. Anybody heard that word? Yeah. Well, it's huge, and it's taking down the planet. It's the worst climate of all time.
well, yeah, we'll keep these up here.
Yeah.
People want to see it.
Private or government? Private or government?
What's that?
Private outfits or government?
They've actually started turning it over to private contractors. They like to do that, just like Halliburton. You know what I mean? They don't want to get their fingers dirty, you know, so they hire other private contractors. You can go online and there's ads. Oh yeah, use my spray machine. It's better than any other. You know, come and pay me. You know.
Well, we'll have these if people want to.
Yeah, please get the YouTube information off of there. There's a link there that's you should watch that at least. The advisor to Obama comes on.
I think it's cut you off now. Alright. Yeah, so we're thinking of some other examples of false solutions and why, and maybe we can sort of be brief so that other people can respond with their ideas and reactions, if that will work. I thought I saw your hand. No, okay. Oh.
Nuclear is always a really touchy subject. I was just talking with one of the climate writers, I think it was here in Orlando, I think it might have moved on, and he's cycling around and spreading the word about climate change and how we need to do things for it, and he's going to grad school for nuclear engineering. So there are definitely people that are on the side with trying to get rid of fossil fuels and are still like, full steam ahead with nuclear power, we can make it safe. I'm not claiming that. I don't know enough about it to really make an informed opinion personally. But that's definitely and I was thinking really a definition of what a false solution was, like something that will create a problem, maybe down the road or something like that. Like solar panels use non-renewable resources to get created, and we're nowhere near that point where it's going to be an issue. But know, I was just trying to think of like how things might not be a false solution if you're looking for like the silver bullet for energy source. You know what I mean? I feel like you're always going to be engaging in about like what's the lesser of two evils here.
There's an organization that I really trust called Nuclear Information Resource Service, NIRS.org, and they have pretty much analyzed the whole idea that nuclear power might be a solution. And basically, the amount of rock that you have to mine to get a little bit of the magic stuff that does it, between that and transport and the 18-inch thick stainless steel walls of the reactor vessel and the concrete and all the rest of it, the capacity factor of 50% on an average, maybe a little better nowadays. Somewhere between, nothing goes wrong with it, it will have to run half of its lifespan to break even on greenhouse gases at best. And if something goes wrong with it, forget about it, let alone one huge traffic jam when everybody's trying to escape the Vermont Yankee or Idiot Point. And the half-life of some of the byproducts runs into billions of years. So if you need even one little LED light to guard that for a billion years, there goes your greenhouse savings. It's bullshit nuclear power. And they're pushing breeder reactors again, which they say is an infinite source of fuel, because there's a lot of U-238, relatively speaking, and very little U-238.